Friday. Welcome to all of you joining us live this morning. We have Instagram and YouTube here on the live Friday Q&A live. I'm excited to answer your questions live. I didn't get a chance to poll all of you, but I welcome you all to submit questions. Today, we're going to go over a whole bunch of COVID-related news. I have a whole bunch of news to report. And then also, I'm feeling it. And so a lot of times when I feel it, I get a sense that maybe you all too are feeling it. But what I want to do is I want to highlight how do we keep ourselves emotionally and mentally tuned in and just kind of not so bogged down by everything. We are dealing with a pandemic, global pandemic, and here in the US, we're dealing with intense emotions and protests and just a lot of things that need to be addressed. And a lot of us, like myself, are empathic and are absorbing a lot of this. So I want to tackle 6 tips for all of you, and then we'll dig into questions. So good morning, everybody. The world right now is at 6.6 million cases. The US is almost at 2 million. We're at 1.931. So 1,931,000 cases. We increased our death rates or our quantity of deaths yesterday by a significant amount. 1,000 individuals died yesterday of COVID. So we have 109,000 dead from this virus. Yesterday alone, the US increased our cases by 41,000. We are seeing states and cities on the incline. 19 states have more cases this week than they did last week. There are pockets and clusters, but there's definitely still an increase. 13 states are maintaining, so they're not as increasing, but there may be maintenance of their cases. And then 18 cases are trending on the low end or on the decline. Several states that are sticking out for us today, Texas, they posted one of their largest days. They are at 69,000. They had an increase in one single day by 26,000 cases. And Florida hit 60,000. They put up 1,300 new cases yesterday. The casinos in Vegas are back open. They opened yesterday. Today in Orlando, all of the Universal theme parks, Universal Studios, Islands of Adventure, and there's another one. I can't remember. That's a little newer. But they're open. So Orlando tourism is starting to kind of potentially pick up. And in the world of football, you guys know we're big college football fans. For any of you who are SEC fans, we're an ACC family. So I'm going to say this with a straight face. The University of Alabama football, they have right now 5 positive player cases of COVID. They brought all the students back together, and before they could even implement social distancing, team-run, university-led practices, the students gathered Tuesday and Wednesday and had their own private practice with 0 social distancing and no protocols in place. Over 50 of the players were on one of the practice fields, and so there's a huge call to quarantine all 50 players. So who knows what's going to happen there. And Arkansas State has also released that they have over 7 positive COVID cases. So, that's going to be probably the dilemma as we get into August and September and the season. So we'll see what happens with that. We globally, I want to dig into Brazil and Russia. Brazil, just alarming growth. They are now over 600,000 cases. They are at 618,584 cases. They increased by 31,000 in a day. So they had their biggest day yesterday in cases. Russia is at 449,000 cases. Globally speaking, there are exactly 123 different pre-trial vaccines for the coronavirus. The Science Now journal article released yesterday, the virus might not be mutating as quickly as we or science had thought. So that could be very good from a standpoint of if the vaccines are going to be effective, that the genetics and the sequencing of the DNA and RNA with the slowed or not as speedy of a mutation is indicative that we might actually be on target with that. The CDC has recommended protesters. Now, this is not in like written form, but it was verbal in a press conference. They have recommended anybody, and obviously we have individuals of all ages who are protesting, all walks of life, all ethnicities, different skin colors. People are coming together for unity and safe policing and disarming the racism that runs rampant in our world here in the US. But the protesters, the CDC's recommended that if you protest that, you should get a coronavirus test. So that's the latest kind of news with the protesting and testing. We haven't really seen any hotspots yet. That remains to be seen. But, give it the next week and 2 weeks, we'll have more information about potential clusters from certain areas. There is a study by NIAID where they're going to look at 6,000 people, children and families, in 11 cities over 6 months. And the study is going to try and figure out just how transmittable the virus is to children and clarify if children are less likely to get coronavirus. So this is going to be happening now. It's a 6-month study. We won't hear about the news until the end of the year, but that'll give us a better sense of the impact of children and families. It's not nearly timely for us who are parents and dealing with kids in school. That's why we are homeschooling Gabriel right now, testing it out to see if this is something that I can juggle for the fall and next year. There's a new study by the BMJ that assesses kids and the inflammatory syndrome that children have. What they're finding is the 3 kind of core symptoms. Abdominal pain is present. Gastro symptoms, sometimes nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. And they are also identifying that the children that end up having the extensive nature of this impact, the inflammatory related condition, that there is some degree either in DNA, their genes, or their it is. So what I'm trying to say is that they've identified it affects African Americans or individuals. Now this is over the world. Anybody who has any DNA genetics back to Africa. So I don't know genetically what that means, but they've identified that there are definitely some risk factors. And we're seeing more cases occur. California, Seattle has cases now. Now this is really interesting. This originated in China, study-wise, and then there's a specific study, very small group study out of New York by Northwell and Cold Spring Harbor Labs. But it got kicked off because China had started to observe that patients who are recovering faster, having less issues with high fever, and had better pulse ox rates, they noticed a trend. And the trend was these patients were taking over-the-counter heartburn medicine like Pepcid. So these guys assessed and said, okay, we want to do a test and we want to see based on our patients. And so essentially, and it's a handful of patients, essentially what they wanted to do was to identify the patients who were taking Pepcid, wanted to know why was it working, what was it doing, what was the impact. And essentially the over-the-counter Pepcid, specifically Pepcid, and this was published, their findings was published in the journal called Gut, G-U-T. This small study on Famotidine, so that is the actual name of Pepcid. Famotidine apparently decreases the fever. It minimizes the extent of the symptoms. It improves oxygen levels. And in fact, everybody who's taking it has recovered. So there's a high survival rate. Very interesting. But the question right now that they're digging further into is they believe that this peptid, the famotidine, addresses H2 receptors. These are inflammatory receptors. We find these most prevalent in the stomach and the lungs, and that's a blocker for inflammation in the stomach and the lungs. So there's a possibility that this might be another aspect that's added to the kind of protocol. So we'll have the, kind of pre-diagnostic testing of the blood-based biomarkers, IL-6, like I talked about yesterday. If you missed that show, I think that was a great show. So watch it, please, on the playlist. But this is another, we're learning more and more, and I think this is important to note. Okay, so and the other little kind of noteworthy news is that I guess the president has released that he is going to start campaigning in person next week. And campaigning or protesting, I think it's important that people wear protection, eye goggles, protection, face masks, definitely N95 if you have access to get those. And, as soon as you get home, wash your hair, wash your face, and do all of the necessary elements and measures to keep yourself healthy. Okay, so now before I dig into your questions, I just want to go over 6 little points. I'm definitely feeling quite emotionally drained. And today just kind of tipped it off. I don't know if you guys have seen the senior citizen, a 75-year-old protester, happens to be a white gentleman, regardless of his color of his skin. It's just absolutely insane. He was pushed by, it looks like 2 police officers. He falls back and he clearly has a head trauma. And it's just, there's just a lot of stuff that we're dealing with and observing. And part of my task for all of you is I've got to go through the news, and I end up exposing myself to a lot of the news, and it's very emotionally charging. So this is what I want to kind of highlight: 6 ways for you to kind of deal with some of the emotions that the pandemic is causing you, as well as if any of the civil unrest, justified civil unrest due to multitude of slayings of our colored friends and family members and citizens in Georgia and in Louisiana and in Minnesota. And you're witnessing folks speaking up and getting pepper sprayed and sprayed with bullets. Women who are pregnant are getting hit with the bean bags. It's insane. So at any rate, here are 6 things that you can do. 1, take a break. Take a break from media, take a break from, just the social world. I have put down my phone a whole lot more, particularly because I'm doing mommy camp with Gabriel. And so I'm not seeing all my emails. I'm not connecting as fiercely as I usually do. So 1, take a break. 2, seek professional help. There are a ton of telemed resources that your insurance companies offer. There are also telemed resources that are accessible. One of my friends that worked with me in my clinic in Florida, she's pulling 50 hours a week doing telemed mental health counseling. It's okay to seek help, and it's okay to have somebody else listen to you apart from friends and family. And sometimes it's actually a safer space for you to just unload and to have some guidance that is a third party individual. So I want to encourage all of you to take advantage of those resources, especially if you do pay for insurance, you have access. And especially now with COVID, there's a lot more, the access points are a lot easier. So that's critical. Number 3, lower high stress points. So anything that causes you stress, start to make changes on that. The other thing, most importantly, and this is what I'm doing, practicing mindfulness. And so perspective helps. Gratitude and mindfulness gives us perspective. It can help lower our stress levels. I teach you all different ways, techniques, and even resources like my wonderful adrenal drops that I'm about halfway through this bottle from stress. But, these are things that you can do. So it's not just supplementation, and it's not just the diet related elements. It's also the mental health aspect. So I think this is critical that I just kind of remind everybody about that. Okay. The other thing too is to focus on your health. So number 5 is to literally put yourself first. on the plane, you always hear, was they're kind of going through safety measures, if we were in an event where the airbags deploy, you need to put your mask on your face before you put the mask on your child or your husband or whoever. Same is true in this situation. We need to make sure we're mindful of our daily health activities. And sorry, it's going to start downpouring, so you're probably going to hear lots of rain coming off of the windowsill. But this means exercising outside. It means making sure you're getting your green juice, getting your omegas, your multivitamins, some of the core basic micronutrients, getting fresh air, grounding, taking your shoes off and putting your feet in sand or salt water. You can make, if you can't get out, you can order sand. You can stick your feet. I mean, this sounds really cheeky, but there are a lot of ways to bring some of these items to all of us who are in a quarantine mode, and also employ using our baths and using our home in unique ways to support our health and wellness. So I just want to remind you of that. I don't think I have any dogs outside. Just trying to remember if we've left it. Sometimes we'll have a dog that doesn't come in. We're like, okay, whatever. And they're out sniffing squirrels and stuff. And then I'm like, oh gosh, it's really downpouring. But I think they're all in and sleeping. I'll see a little nose poking. Okay, sorry. Now, my bonus tip, so number 6, is, and I posted links down below, is to use black onyx. And for any of you empathic individuals out there, if you're really feeling a lot of angst and a frustration, black onyx is a very protective, natural gemstone. And so like crystals have a lot of energy, and this is one of these kind of metaphysical, but also very much natural practices where we can use jewelry to employ and calm, to employ peace and protection. And black onyx is always the jewelry that I wear. Generally speaking, I will wear it at some point and even have like a little stone in my pocket when I'm working with patients. I haven't had to, obviously, more recently, and I've misplaced my stone. I have a feeling that the stone and bracelet are at the clinic, because usually that's where I use those items. But I am going to be buying one off of Etsy. I've posted the 2. There's 2 bracelets that I really loved. Made sure they have enough stock if you guys want to as well. But black onyx is a wonderful tool and resource for you to employ some healing and protection. It just kind of puts up a shield emotionally. It's very protective. And I see black tourmalines, selenite, moonstone's another one, hematite, black onyx particularly. I love that. So the other thing, if you're really into stones or crystals, you always want to clear them on the full moon. So you put your stones, you can have clearing, like a actual crystal quartz. That's your clearing stone ordinarily. So you want to make sure you store them on a clear stone every time after you wear them. And then you take everything outside during a full moon and it clears it. So smudging, I saw somebody notate on that. I actually am very excited. I transplanted my Russian sage, which is usually the sage that we use to smudge. And so my plan is to hopefully have that grow into multiple plants so I can smudge. But you can smudge your home with sage. You can put salt and, in corners just to clear energy. But this is something that we just have to be really mindful. So I hope this resonates. If it does, give me a thumbs up, you guys. Okay, and now I want to answer your questions. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go back and forth. Okay, happy Satvination. Happy World Environment Day. Yay. A sad note on that I read yesterday. Again, going through all the news is somewhat depressing. I read that it's summertime, or it's wintertime in Australia, or it's starting to become wintertime in Australia. And apparently Australia had the highest amount of bleaching to their Great Barrier Reef. And bleaching is when the water levels reach too high of a temperature and it kills those organisms. Lori says, yes, docs, we empaths are feeling tired and drained. Absolutely. Okay. Lori says we need to smudge and cleanse our aura. I never watch news, only you. Well, thank you. Okay, so good morning, Jenny and Candy's Girl. For all of you on the replay, this is a live show, so I'm going to be communicating very actively with our community members here. We've got folks from all over Texas and Kentucky. Hey, Holly, Bay State. Okay, Sharon, how do you support emotionally those who have to use medical services and are subjected to the rules? Let me move this over here. Subjected to the rules and fear of COVID there. Children that have to have surgery are made to be alone, no parents. I hate hearing that. How do you support those? So the big thing I think support, if you support distance, so there's a lot of ways to support. Care packages, items that the child or the individual can take with them into the hospital, books, games, things like that. You can also send deliveries and food, that could go to the patient that's in a clinical setting. As for families and individuals that are in medical services, I think the most important thing is emotional support, connection. So we need to be connected. We need to ground them with love and personal connection of health. Especially those that are in these settings that are constantly seeing people sick. We need to remind them the other side because they're so bogged down, and we need to get their mind off of things. So I think there are a lot of different ways to do that. There, depending on who the individual is and what their access points are, you could easily get them a subscription to, Amazon, Prime TV. You can get them subscriptions to Hulu. These are like $5.99 a month, really inexpensive ways for them to also kind of zone out, watch comedy. There's we've been watching actually a lot. Jerry Seinfeld's latest stand-up is totally hilarious. And I don't know if it was on HBO, but Brian queued it up and I laughed so hard. It is so funny. And so there are a lot of different ways to kind of do that. The other thing too is, classic books like word search books and crosswords and puzzles and games, but things that really take people's mind off of what's happening, I think is most important. The other thing too is if you feel like they're, you could gift them these Onyx bracelets. You can also organize for them to have telemed services. Traditionally we'd say, oh, give them a gift spot, a spa gift certificate. We can't do that right now. That's too risky. But, there are ways to support them from afar. And I think that's probably the best way, are things that you can gift them, things that are reusable, that are somewhat mindless and takes them off of the focus. There are also some really great, I've seen gift sets and things like that are very thoughtful for a lot of caregivers, even some of the cute little tops that you find on Etsy as well. So I hope that was helpful and answered your question. Okay, let's see here. So Q&A live Friday. Okay, Sheila. Hi, Sheila. Would you have the vaccine, Melissa? Having Hashimoto's, I'm a little worried as I don't react well to the flu vaccine. As a child, I never had any vaccines. I have had all the usual illnesses. So that's a good question. I don't know that answer just yet. I will say as a parent, I'm concerned that they are not testing, as far as I know. I haven't seen anything saying that they're testing these vaccines on children. Most of the test samples have been adults. So I'd like to see that in the mix. I've never gotten a flu shot. I was a vaccinated child. I was born in 78, grew up in the 80s. I don't recall the amount of vaccines that like Gabriel, they've got the chart of like everything they want him to have. We don't follow suit. We are very slow in our process. And, I didn't do any vaccines with him for the first like 9 to 12 months. And that's our family choice. Everybody has a choice. And so I'm not going to have that debate, but, I think it is positive right now that we know it's not mutating. I think that's a positive. What I'm curious about is what we learn, and time will tell, what we learn about the antibodies and the immunity. Yesterday I reported that only 15% of the antibodies are actually the right antibodies. That's a little bit of a challenge. And that still is a novel virus, novel to our immune system. I don't know how that's going to fare. And there's even talk, like something I was reading last night about the vaccines is not just the, 2 doses, maybe 3 doses, but maybe like a booster follow-up. So we don't know all that information. The big thing is, if you have any underlying health concerns, it's really critical that you focus on getting those under control. Hashimoto's can be reversed. That I see that all the time. I work with folks. We get your nut levels down, and it doesn't mean you go back to normal eating of gluten and milk or, dairy, but for sure we can get a handle on how your body's, addressing the thyroid. And by the way, the thyroid, people's Adam's apple is right about here. The thyroid sits right here. A lot of times people think it's like way up here. It's not. So under here you have lymph nodes, but your thyroid sits right here. It's this beautiful little butterfly organ. Christine, good morning. Back to my Rio Grande Valley border town. Thanks, Pat and Ron. Appreciate your diligent work. Yes, let's give Pat and Ron a round of applause. They have been so good for moderating, and I see her chastising one of our viewers. It's nice that I don't have to do that. Thank you. Okay, let's see. JP So. Oh yeah, it was so shameful when those cops pushed that elderly man. It still bothers me now. I know. Ugh, just so outrageous. It's that I think that there a lot of images. Obviously, George Floyd and everything that happened with that. The second most challenging is seeing that the military helicopter flying low, like we do on our enemies, on U.S. protesting citizens, practicing our First Amendment rights. Whether you agree or not, we have constitutional rights, and it's quite militaristic. The third is this gentleman, and I don't know the reports. I really hope he's okay. So let's see. Mystic Wolf, is COVID really deadly? I've seen protests all over the country. I've seen none get infected. Enlighten me. Well, Mystic Wolf, that's actually incorrect. People have gotten infected. I've already reported there is an Oklahoma linebacker that was protesting last week and tested positive. It is deadly. We have 109,000 deaths here in the US alone. Brazil's almost at 40,000 deaths, and they've had this blow up in the last few weeks. So it is. And if you want to get enlightened, I'd encourage you to watch all of my live shows and watch traditional news, because even then you'll get information. Okay. And, I appreciate that question. Oh, Shelly, thank you for the $2 super chat. When should I take cytokine suppress with EGCG? I would take it. So I have, I always have questions. So the question is, do you have any underlying health conditions, and are you taking any medication? Generally, if we're trying to lower the inflammation, which is cytokine suppress does do that, I would take it at night. So a lot of the things that I want to get in the system, like the NO2 or the nitric oxide ultra, you want to take that at night. You want to let it work in your system. So that would be my recommendation there. But I don't know your specific background and situation. There's potentially a lot of variables there, but most often, the recommended dose, how they recommend on the label, is what's the best to follow suit. Let's see. Lori, let's see. Is it okay to take a multi-mineral complex and trace minerals? So I would generally, your multi-mineral complex should have all the right multi-minerals. And then the trace minerals would be an additional kind of version of the minerals. I'd want to make sure you don't have any overwhelming kind of combinations where like there's zinc on both of them and you're overloading on zinc. Sometimes you might want to spread it out, take one in the morning and then take the other in the evening just to balance you out. And then also it can depend on your absorption. So that can be a factor. Oh, Whitney's on. Hey, good morning, Whitney. Good morning, Melissa. Can you remind me what you recommend for elevated aldosterone levels? Yes, it's called Cerritin Plus. And this you can find in my Full Script store. So it's Cerritin Plus. And this is from the casein. It's an extracted protein, or no, it's not a protein. It's a peptide. So it is a peptide that's extracted from casein. This, I take this at night, and boy, does it work. It's really good. Your dad's genetic test revealed an increased risk of aldosterone enzyme disorder, but his functional medicine doctor didn't verify. Yeah, this would be the way to go. That and adrenal supportive. The other thing I would recommend is, if he hasn't had it done, have them do an ultrasound of his adrenals. A lot of times there will be little cysts or tumors related to that. Spironolactone is definitely what they recommend. I would definitely do a scan for sure. Okay. Oh, let's see here. So Q&A live Friday, ask me questions. And let's see here. Okay, Dwayne. Hey, Dwayne. Some seem to think vitamins shouldn't be taken because most of the vitamins your body eliminates through the urine. Your thoughts? Actually incorrect. So we have water-soluble vitamins and we have fat-soluble vitamins and minerals. There's a lot of variables. You need a proper absorption process. So good, healthy digestion. You need, your food's broken down. There are a lot of methodologies. You can do shots that are transdermal, completely bypasses the digestive process. You can do sublingual. You can do liposomal. You can take liquids. You can take pills, tablets. There's a lot of delivery methods. But for instance, if you have achieved your B vitamin quota, in the morning, and let's say you're deficient mid-afternoon because you have a stressful lunchtime, you take them in the morning. Whatever you don't need, you will flush out. But if you take them again and you really need them, you're not going to be flushing them out because you're absorbing them. So there's a big difference. I don't like to kind of have blanket statements saying we, urinate all of our vitamins out. That's actually incorrect. You do absorb them as long as you're taking the right supplement brand. And, like for instance, Centrum, that brand of vitamins are horrible. They don't break down very well in the body. You want to go with easily absorbable micronutrients. And that will often be where you have, for instance, like a capsule that has powder in it. So if I open this up, this is a powder. Your body's easily able to break open this lining through your stomach acid. And that then becomes a more absorbable version. Now, if I look at like my magnesium glycinate, this is a tab. This is traditionally something that would be an easily absorbable tab. But the way to test it, or any of your vitamins to see if you're going to absorb them, grab apple cider vinegar in a small cup and throw your Centrum vitamins in there and see if they break down. The apple cider vinegar is the experiment, meaning the apple cider vinegar is your stomach acid. And at the age of 30 and older, we have decreasing stomach acid levels. So that's another factor. So depending on your age, can be a variable in terms of how well you're absorbing your nutrients, which is why I like to, introduce like my community. I take this as a liquid because I don't want to overburden my system and I actually want instant absorption. Or why I like my REM sleep is a liquid gel. It's a lot more bioavailable that way. So I hope that answers your questions. Sheila, is it okay to take high dose vitamin D3, 4,000 IU alongside a high quality cod liver oil? Is it better to take them on alternate days? You can take them in the same day. I would not take them at the same time. And Lori says, Doc, funny story. I used to clean for a doctor. He said, all a vitamin supplement does is give you expensive urine. Yeah, that is the basic argument of ignorance. And it's really annoying when doctors do that. I get it when, everyday folks that aren't immersed in this industry. Like I am one of those geeks. I literally listen to all the manufacturing webinars and, have taken multiple webinars, even about reopening, your spa, your clinic. We have no plans of doing that anytime soon. And plus I can't because I don't have childcare. So, but I still immerse myself in that totally. And that tends to be an ignorant response, but hopefully when they're educated, they see it differently. But also it's, I'm not surprised a doctor would say that, they're scripting. The same could be said to the pharmaceuticals that they dispense. And actually we do see This is really insane. If we test our water, and we know that we have a lot of cities that have sanitation treatment centers and repurposing their water. If we test our tap water, there is evidence of cholesterol medication as well as birth control, which is like a whole nother topic that is very concerning. So we surely excrete that as well. Myrna Berm, what can you do to help treat a hiatal hernia naturally? So I love slippery elm and aloe vera. There's actually a really good combination. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like Desert Essentials maybe. It was a really nice liquid kind of coating, but hiatal hernia is something that, man, it can definitely give you challenges. I have had a lot of folks that that is definitely a factor for pain, GERD, reflux, digestive grievances. And there are actually some activities, physical therapy activities you can do to kind of recalibrate the hernia. Okay, so let's see here. So glad you're teaching about supplements. Thanks, Pat. My multi is from Natural Health Cairo. Their powder. Okay. Sharon, you don't pee out B12. I have to take it sublingual drops because I can't absorb in intestines, but if damaged due to leaky gut. Yeah, so there's a lot of different factors like Sharon's notating, in terms of like that absorption of our nutrients. If you have any health challenge, especially in the digestive tract, it's sometimes, and then genetics. So a lot of B12 absorption has to do with MTHFR and genetic mutations and deficiencies in the way our genes process and allow our body to function and to absorb energy. So that's definitely a factor. Okay. Dwayne says, I used to take Garden of Life natural multivitamin, and I hated because I had to take 4 a day. Sometimes I'd forget to take 2 of the capsules. So I actually love Garden of Life. I know people hate it because they sold out. I think they're owned now by Kraft, maybe. But what you want to reach for, just in the world of like multivitamins, is you want to reach for plant-based. So plant-based is more attuned to what we can absorb versus synthetic. So synthetic is always going to be adulterated and less, more challenging. Now, there are some things where like when we synthesize a biopeptide, that's a very different situation. But multivitamins, you definitely want it to be plant-based, and you tend to take more because we're extracting those out of food versus the really cheap and inexpensive synthetic version. So, the plan was for me in the fall, I was going to go to this big expo. One of the things that's on my docket professionally and has been for like over a decade, I just need to pull the trigger, is to manufacture my own line. I have a very specific target of a supplement, and I don't know what all is out there. I don't know if I can curate this or I have to now invent some new kind of process, but there is they call it supply side. It's this big expo of all of these companies that have like the powders, and they have like the individual ingredients, and people like me, I want to do a blend, might go to one vendor and say, okay, I want your effervescent, whatever, and I want your, extracted, plant, blah, blah, blah. That's the kind of stuff where there are some things in a bulk quantity that are more expensive. And you end up absorbing that as a consumer. And I know a lot of you say a lot of the supplements that I sell or recommend are expensive, but they're expensive because they're good quality. They're not junk, synthetic, cheap product. Just like we see junk, cheap, vegetable oil, that stuff is a byproduct, and we get that sold to us in containers to cook with, and we get it put in all these processed foods, and it is killing people. It's making people unhealthy. Okay. June, I just started taking ashwagandha for my adrenals as per nutrition response testing for my chiropractor. It seems that my anxiety and panic attacks have gotten worse. Could it be from ashwagandha? Potentially, if you have an underlying Hashimoto's factor. So that would be something I would assess. Life Extension is a good brand. I like them. And like Sheila says, I try and take as much as I can sublingual. I love it. Is grapeseed oil bad? No, grapeseed oil is good. Depending on the version, I'd go for organic as best you can. Make sure it's natural and raw, not hydrogenated. Clyde Simmons, I'll be the first in line to buy your supplements. Oh, thanks, Clyde. And there are links down below. So we have 10% off everything. We have thousands and thousands of different products. A lot of the things that you normally use and frequent or buy from, even some of the brands, like just a few that have gotten into Target and even some at Walgreens and CVS. But a lot of these are really high level, professional grade, high quality, fantastic. And one of my favorites is Professional Formulas. This brand, they've got a lot of really good liquid homeopathics. And you can peruse and search. So you can go off of, the beaten path and just kind of search in for whatever you're looking for. Okay. Christine wants to say, I want to rewatch the early quarantine live show for stress relieving. Yes, totally. Somebody asked about milk thistle. They heard it wasn't good to take. Oh gosh, milk thistle's fantastic. I'm not sure what the parameters around why not to take it. Could very well be maybe some drug contraindicators, but milk thistle is very rich in a compound called silymarin. I think I say that right. And that is a very motivative, bile enhancing, or bile production enhancing compound that the liver then starts pumping out toxic bile. And bile is what we need the liver to be producing. A lot of times these livers get bogged down if they are fatty livers, sclerosis from high insulin levels and high cortisol, which they're perfectly fine, healthy looking people walking around with fatty liver. It's because of hormonal imbalance or an overwhelming amount of medication. It's not just alcoholism. That's usually what we think of and refer to as a source. And so if you feel emotionally like angsty and angered, that's a liver. So we have to detox and nourish your liver. If you have lighter bowel movements and, like I hold up this bottle, it's really hard. Like this dark brown nature of this bottle, this is what you want your bowel movement to look like. If it's lighter tan or color, and like I'll hold up this, my makeup case, I do have patients that say it's a light tan color. Okay, you're not producing enough bile. Milk thistle will get that moving. Milk thistle is definitely very good also for helping reduce triglyceride, cholesterol, and excess estrogen in your body because it helps the liver process that out. Your Steph 23, your thoughts on doing a water fasting day? Is that really health promoting? Not a big fan of a water fasting day. If you did a fasting day, I'd do bone broth, preferably something you make on your own or high quality bone broth that's gelatinous in a cool form. That would be much more nutrient dense. Water, you're going to get some depletion there. Lori, can you take mushroom products with candida and fungus? Yes, you can. Actually, the fungus that we refer to within our system, mold, overwhelming mold toxicity, you can do the mushrooms. The most important part is to focus on the yeast and the candida or the bad bacterial imbalances. Candida gets lumped into like candida. I equate candida to be like where fibromyalgia used to get lumped into. Like I used to have so many people say, I have fibromyalgia. And the reality is they had also other underlying health conditions. So that's one of the things that like, I feel like a lot of people say, oh, I have candida. And there's just sometimes more pathogenic activity going on. Not to downplay any of you who are experiencing that, but a lot of times there's other things going on. So good, digestive health focused, healing, probiotic density, good prebiotics are going to be critical there. Lori P, is 1,000 milligrams of GABA too much at bedtime? It depends. I mean, to be honest with you, I like to test the neurotransmitters to get accuracy in dosing. There are a lot of supplements you'll see between 200 and 500. That tends to be the average. So that may be a little much. You can overwhelm your body. You can be too high on GABA, and there can be GABA I don't want to say hyper GABA, but you can have too much, your levels of GABA can be too high, and it's all about ratio. So the body is all about balance. So we'll see, potassium and sodium levels, and we'll see GABA and PABA, and like all those have to be equally balanced. Does milk thistle help with hormonal balance? Yes. The way milk thistle does this, in conjunction, make sure if you're trying to balance your hormones, you're taking omegas, 3, 6, 9, equally balanced. The omegas break down these really dense estrogen bonds. So the most overwhelming estrogen in our body, we call it a xenoestrogen. This comes from like makeup, our hair care products, everyday use items, those Glade plugins, all that stuff, aerosolized scents and things. The estrogens, those estrogens are 13 bonds, 13 chains long. The omegas actually help break that down. Our body can't break that down very well. So when we take omega, it breaks that down, and then the milk thistle helps the liver further break down and move out those estrogens. So very, very powerful. The liver is critical. If you want to balance your hormones, balance your liver. It's counterproductive because you think, oh, focus on the ovaries. And that's some of it, but definitely the liver is a big part of it. What are the best sweeteners for baking, cooking? So overwhelming to know what to use. Granddaughter loves to bake. So it kind of depends on what you're making. We use coconut sugar, turbino sugar. We'll use raw sugar. Others, I just forego sugar and I'll use mashed bananas. I'll use dates. So it depends on like what consistency you're going with. Like if you're going with cookies, some of the granular ones don't always work. Like xylitol is one. You can bake with it. I never find like it. So I alter it based on what I'm making. For instance, like my mommy cookies, we made some Monday. Gabriel and Brian both chow down on. They're actually so good. But like I use 2, kind of really almost mushy, really spotted bananas, and that's it. Sometimes I'll use honey or molasses. So there are a lot of different ways to supplement your traditional sugar. But if you need sugar, go with natural, like organic raw sugar. And sometimes you don't need, like the recipe doesn't need as much sugar, but baking is so about exact measurements. You have to play around when you start altering some of those. Hemp seed oil, chia seeds for omegas. Love monk fruit. Yes, monk fruit's another good one. What about artichoke supplements for digestion? Yes, artichoke is very good for digestion. Okay, so DDJ2, taking care of my father, 88 years old and has dementia. Currently has problems with sleep, yelling out at night. Any suggestions? It sounds like night terrors. It's probably his brain processing. And it might be some, traumas from his childhood. I'd get him the Bach flowers. They have a PM version. It's a blue label, and spritz that on his mouth. The other thing too would be I would also get him the REM sleep because it has elements in here to balance the neurotransmitters, memory recall as well, and it'll lower his stress level. So that can be also a factor. He needs to get way more into the solid sleep, and he's probably not achieving that. What should you take? When should you take vitamin D? I hear at night, but then it blocks melatonin. Then I hear to take it in the day with meal that has fat. Who's taking it at night and sleeping pretty good. It really is kind of up to you when you choose to take it. What you want to make sure is you take it away from your traditional fat-soluble vitamins, except for flaxseed oil. So you want to take those two together. Flax kind of protects, I don't know why, it just protects this, it further protects the cells. It's pretty spectacular. So, and also depending on your levels, you may want to take 10,000 a day, divide it 5,000 in the morning, 5,000 at night. So you evenly are supplying your cells with D. So that's another option. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but that definitely is an answer. Is cod liver oil 369? Yes. And my favorite cod liver oil is fermented cod liver oil by a company named Green Pastures. They are awesome. I have to replenish mine, so I'll make sure I show you guys the label next week. What do you think about longevity products? I don't know that brand. Onyx, Dr. Melissa, why do some supplements cause headache and nausea? Excellent question. So sometimes it is how you're taking it. Some shouldn't be taken on an empty stomach. I sometimes I screw up and I take my trace ionic minerals. I have it on my, I have like little pockets of supplements. I have them here on my desk, and I have like our like new little supplement counter Brian set up for me during the quarantine. And then I have them upstairs by my nightstand and near my my sink. And the trace ionic minerals are by my sink. Generally, I will take them after I've made sure I've eaten. And sometimes even then, if I get too many drops, and I'm a little haphazard when I take these drops. I'm not exactly measuring out. I'm not always looking. And so a lot more can sometimes come into my mouth. And the other thing too is with my minerals, I don't like to mix them in plastic. So you want to make sure you're using glass or any type of like ceramic with the minerals. They're very strong. You don't want to be absorbing the plastic. So sometimes I do that, and then all of a sudden I feel absolutely nauseous. And others that cause headaches, I have a few in my lineup that like vitamin K2 can cause a headache. There are other ones that might be blood thinning that can cause a headache. So it kind of depends on the supplement itself. Sometimes it's the timing of you taking it. If your label says suggested use, 1 capsule 3 times a day, or is directed by your practitioner, like this is the one that I recommended for blood pressure. This is something that it's not really clear. Like I could take it with food or without. Some actually say take with a meal, meaning if you don't, you're probably going to have some nausea. So that could be a factor. Then, depending on how quickly you find you have nausea, it could very well be an allergy to something in it. There's gluten, often in supplements. Cheaper supplements will use gluten. It's a cheap filler. So check that out and see if there are maybe some ingredients in there that you're allergic to. Oh, Letitia, $10 super chat. Oh, thank you. Yay. Happy Friday. That totally made my morning. Heart, and smiley face. I appreciate you, Letitia. You're so sweet. Hi, Maria. She says, no meetings at work today, so I can join and listen to Dr. Melissa. Yay. Best company to purchase vitamins. It all depends. I have, the best clearinghouse, if you want to find, is Full Script. They are very, very solid in terms of bringing super high quality brands. It kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for supplementation, you're looking for minerals, one of the things that I find are some of the brands I work with, they're just great at like digestive enzymes. And then others are awesome. All they do are homeopathics. And that's their lane. They're experts, and that is all they do. They don't deviate. Some brands are a little bit more broader stream, like Designs for Health, and other brands that, they are kind of more expansive. It depends on the brand philosophy. It depends on who is their, the chief medical officer. It depends on a lot of different factors. So that answer is really it's hard to answer that. And two, sometimes the supplements that you take might not be great. So, make sure you're reading your labels. The other thing is storage. So I have a ton of people who take omegas and they're like, I burp, I belch, it's gross, it smells. Well, 70 to 80% of the omegas on the market generally are bad by the time you take them. And some of this has to do with storage. And I want to talk to you about this, not because I'm in the hate mode with Amazon by any means. They are very beneficial to all of us who are at home needing supplies to our home during quarantine and pandemic. But, Amazon also contracts with third-party vendors, folks like myself. Like if I wanted to rep a brand, I could do something. They have a version of Amazon. It's called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. So if I wanted to send in, let's say I sold toasters, I send to the warehouse toasters, Amazon lists it, Amazon ships it. Their warehouse might not be climate controlled. Now, if I am Fulfillment by Amazon in my own warehouse, my environment might not be air conditioned or air controlled. And so there's a lot of variables. And this is one of the things that be cautious too, who you're buying from, especially in the Amazon world, especially now, because a lot of people have made that switch. Everybody's going online. Online sales are blowing up. Everybody's at home. And there are vendors that might buy stuff at wholesale and sell it, and it's close to the end of the date, and how is it being stored? So I'm always cognizant of that, with your omegas, particularly. I have melatonin drops, 20 UGs per drop. It says 1 drop at night. Is this too strong or too? I think if it says 1 drop, that should be fine. Test it and see how you do with it. Sheila, does flaxseed lower cholesterol? In some ways it can. I actually like red yeast rice better for that. And I like improvements on the fiber. So for instance, if you consume flaxseed that's been ground up, that's awesome. You get this like gelatinous fiber. That gelatinous fiber moves cholesterol out. So if we're going to use flaxseed to lower cholesterol, it's the fiber content in it that I like. More fiber equals more movement and reduction of your cholesterol. And that's partially because constipation, you're reabsorbing those toxins. Let's see. Letitia said, I'm happy to gain a lot of health and knowledge on the live with everyone. Thank you. Yay. Lots of hugs and kisses. Yeah, I could do that video is constantly changing, Dwayne, on vitamins and brands. Always changing. Lori P, I take them in an AM smoothie. Okay, that's good. Let's see. I have Arctic cod liver oil. Okay, that's good. I use ground flax seeds instead of eggs for baking. Yes, so that's fantastic. We use that. So my egg substitute in my mommy cookies are flax seeds, and this is a fun trick. So here's an insider scoop on how, like, my mommy cookies, I've been bolstering them even further. I take my Rebel, I take my dark chocolate protein, and instead of water or even like an oat milk, usually I soak my flax seeds in oat milk just to give it even more protein content. I put my Rebel in there and mix it up. And I grind flax, golden flax, and chia seeds. That's my like combo. And then I put my Rebel in, usually like a half to 3/4 of a Rebel is my kind of dosing for like a double dose of my mommy cookies. Holy cow, they're really, really good. It gets this like chocolatey kind of flavor with the nut. Fantastic. What lab should you request from the doctor? That's so broad. I don't know how to answer that. It depends on what's going on with your body. It depends on, are you looking at hormones? Are you looking at gut? There's saliva, serum, there is stool. There's all different types of tests. So I don't know the answer to that stage 1711. I need to know more background. How about psyllium? So psyllium is a version of it. Psyllium is a fiber. Psyllium is the kind of hulls of a psyllium seed. I like psyllium. I've used it before. It needs to be used when the bowels are clear. So if you're already moving your bowels 3 or 4 times a day, that's when you want to employ it. But you need to make sure that you've got enough fluid content. Otherwise, it can get clay-like and clog up some of the bowel movements. So that could be a challenge. Steph, I've done a video on my mommy cookies. I should post that to the community tab because they are so fab. Gabriel loves them and everybody eats them. We put dairy-free chocolate chips in them. I have oats. I put moringa powder, and Gabriel's like, "Oh, we're doing green powder," and he sees like I'm just throwing in all sorts of stuff. Green powder. I put my super greens, like all sorts of stuff. I'll put lion's mane. We put reishi powder. I mean, we put all sorts of stuff in it. It's awesome. Rebel is a protein drink. I don't have. Actually, I've got more on order. I have one left. Tomorrow's show, I'll drink it so I can show you. Okay, so anxiety issues, can feel energy gearing up in my body, perimenopausal. What can I do in the morning to prevent it? That's an excellent question. So I do want to get to that. So Instagram, we're on 30 seconds. Quick on anxiety and perimenopausal. I would recommend you take Ephisoy. It has maca and dim. Those are great for perimenopausal related anxiety. And anxiety also, it would be a good idea to have your neurotransmitters tested. So I do need to run. Gabriel's upstairs. I got to hit mommy camp. But tomorrow we're going to go live. I'm going to try and bring Facebook on. I'm excited to announce today that I bought yesterday a Tulsi plant. Tulsi tea. Woohoo! Bye Instagram. See you tomorrow. All right. So Instagram, get in now. So Instagram has been really weird. It's now not letting me, let's see, hold on. It's now letting, so Instagram now, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's because I hit 10,000, but now my live show no longer shows on my stories. Now it just goes to Instagram TV, which apparently found out they are kind of really gearing up to compete with YouTube. So I'll have both of those running. So we'll see what happens. Okay. So, basketball fan. I swelled up like a balloon from psyllium. I have, diverticulitis. Psyllium's too much for, diverticulitis can be very sensitive. Even the seeds, like chia seeds, can aggravate, nuts. So you have to be really cautious with that. I do like oat. I do like the gelatinous kind of from like real steel cut oats, but like overnight oats, really soaked. Julie Catherine, holistic naturopathic doctor put me on pork-derived thyroid medicine for low thyroid during my pregnancy. I miscarried. Now I'm hyperthyroid. Help. Shoot, I'm so sorry to hear that. So a big thing for hyperthyroid is you can do actual massages of the thyroid gland. Depending on where your numbers are, it could be subclinical. That's so deep, I'd want to monitor and measure more of that specifically. I love pre-digested soft food. Yes. Phyllis, you're welcome. And Julie, the other thing I would want to know how long ago that was. So definitely hang in there. The big thing with any thyroid and any miscarriages, the body goes through a lot of trauma and stress. And we never know why these things happen. And, the best thing we can do is just bolster and fortify, support your body, and also support the emotional health. You've gone through the ringer, and then there's frustration. And I know a lot of frustration with medication. Anytime you go through pregnancy, it takes months, sometimes years for the hormones to balance out. So just give your body grace. And the big thing too is like when you're doing any type of meditative work, just really hone in on healing and loving the thyroid and calming it down. Like, we're not in a race. Like the emotional side is like, I'm not in a race. We're not in a race. And like the thyroid's revving. It's like an engine, like ready to go. And so sometimes there's those emotional aspects, but also like, what aren't you saying, or what are you saying too much of? Meaning tuning into like the emotional body of the thyroid. So this is our language center. This is our communication zone. So this is all about, the chakra energy. Oh, I'm hearing some craziness from upstairs. I think I have a little man coming down. So just really think about blue, calming blue, calming oceans. That's going to be really good meditative work to calm that down. Okay, let's see. So sis, Claudia, I love using castor oil on cysts, depending location, depending on the extent of it. That can be very helpful. Iodine and cysts. Iodine, frankincense, and castor oil topically on cysts are very beneficial. Apparel, look up Mushroom Live. Yes, Mushroom Live. Yeah, I did the Mushroom Live show the other day. Okay. All right, friends, I got to run. Stay tuned tomorrow we're going to do our live show tomorrow. I'm trying to balance things. Mommy Cam's getting the best of me. So just stay tuned, be patient with me, friends. And next week might very well be our last week together of doing lives every day. I might be just tuning back to like Saturday morning. So our schedule is going to be changing here in a week with Brian heading back to work. So I'm sure all of you feel that way. Anyway, so have a great day, everybody. Thank you, Pat, for moderating. I'm appreciative of you. And for our super chats, Letitia, I'm so grateful. You give me super chats all the time, and I so appreciate that. And Shelly R, a super chat. So hopefully you guys found this impactful. Give me a thumbs up, hit the share button, please share, tag friends. And by the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, I have dropped under 100,000. I got a little vocal about some frustrations with everything that's going on in our socioeconomic world and lost a whole bunch of followers. So whatever, I'm not frustrated, but it's just frustrating. The count is what it is. So anyway, do follow. And if the rain stops, I have to share with you, I think one of my most beautiful roses I've ever purchased and grown. He bloomed. I'm calling it it's a he. So it actually has a name, Lady something or other, but it bloomed and it's beautiful. And hopefully last night's rain and today's rain does not hurt it, but it has like 7 other blooms. And I'm going to try and take you out into my garden on Instagram. So definitely follow over there. Thanks, friends, for tuning in. Peace, love, and happiness. Be safe, and definitely take care of yourselves emotionally, mentally, and don't hesitate to ask for help from professionals. A lot of us are here as a resource for you. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Pat. Bye, everybody.